Good evening, everyone. All right. Good evening, everyone. Now, as I share my opening remarks, continue to eat and enjoy your company here. But I'm Nasheed Madyun. Welcome, Florida Humanities. I am the executive director, and I'm excited to share with you some opening words. So you are champions of the humanities. It's a profound honor to welcome you to the inaugural Joe Harbor Circle of Friends Hall of Fame ceremony, an evening where memory, meaning, and mission meet in celebration of Florida's most enduring storytellers. Tonight, we gather not simply to recognize achievement, but to reaffirm belief. Belief in the power of story, in the dignity of thought, and in the boundless potential of human understanding. This evening celebrates the icons whose scholarship, creativity, and courage shaped Florida's cultural identity, and it honors each of you whose generosity sustained that legacy. Let me begin by recognizing those who have carried the torch of Florida Humanities with distinction. From our current board, Jack Davis, Diane Egner, Catherine Wick, you can applaud. We are going through some things and we are resilient. Applaud these wonderful people. Braulio Kalan, Miriam Springle. These are our current board members in the crowd tonight. To our past directors, Steve Seibert, Janine Farber, and even Ann Henderson. We had 4 directors here tonight who each shepherded this organization through moments of change and vision and grace. And to our former board members in the audience tonight, they comprise of the Circle of Friends who are hosting this evening: Sandy Reef, Frank Balfour, Deborah Kynes, Linda Marcelli, Jim Belivac, Rachel Bleckman, and Jim Clark. And for what I understand, there have been board members that are still coming, so we're enlarging our list. But thanks to all of the former board members that are here. We're also deeply grateful to our sponsors and partners who Culver House, Duckwall Foundation, Pinellas Community Foundation, North Florida Land Trust, Tucker Hall, University of South Florida. So belief in this mission strengthens every day. Tonight's celebration introduces our inaugural Hall of Fame class, luminaries whose words, ideas, and convictions define the very soul of our state and nation. Gary Mormino, Zora Neale Hurston, Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, Michael Gannon, James Weldon Johnson, David Colburn, McLeod Bethune. You will learn more about them throughout the evening. Also, I'm saying this with a smile, I've been told to keep this brief, but I have a lot to say, right? Right? The purpose of this gathering, the deeper reason we are here, is twofold. To celebrate, yes, but also to sustain, to honor the icons of Florida's intellectual heritage, and to ensure that their light continues to guide us forward. Florida Humanities, your state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, has for 50 years served as the storyteller of Florida, bringing literature, history, public dialogue to every corner of this state, from the Florida Talks lecture series to Forum magazine. From community oral histories to Smithsonian exhibitions, our work ensures that Floridians understand not only where we come from, but what we can become. But this week depends on support from friends like you. Tonight, your presence and your generosity help sustain our mission to defend the humanities from silence, to elevate the voices that might otherwise be forgotten, and to keep storytelling alive as a public good. Because as we all know, stories are not luxuries, they are lifelines. They remind us that democracy, empathy, and memory are built not on algorithms or economics, but on understanding and the shared human experience. So as we celebrate the inaugural class of the Joe Harbor Circle of Friends Hall of Fame, let us do so with gratitude, with generosity, and with renewed purpose. Let this night affirm what we all believe, that Florida's stories matter, that our storytellers endure, and that all together we will ensure the humanities continue to thrive for generations to come. And as you are moved throughout this evening, you can look in the middle of your table and you will see a QR code. And the joy and the tears and the happiness that you feel and you're overwhelmed, just take out your smartphone and go to the camera and give us $25 to $500 to help us continue our good work. Thank you.
All right, everybody, let's get started. Yeah. Woo. All right, Dr. Mormino, it's time for you to turn your chair around. This is all about you, buddy. Can you all hear me in the back? Thumbs are up. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Seibert. It is my profound honor to lead this section of tonight's activities. We are here to celebrate at least 4 things. First, we are celebrating the organization Florida Humanities. Dr. Madian, his skilled team, the board of directors, is weathering these stormy times with your help and with, to be honest, the generosity of Hugh Culverhouse Jr. This is just a triumph, and it's due to you all. And I know Nasheed thanks you from the bottom of his heart. Other humanities councils in America are not faring so well. And so this is just a real testament to Florida and to the ethics of humanities here in this state. Secondly, we're going to celebrate the humanities in general. We believe in the importance of history and philosophy and literature and poetry and religion and the coalition of ideas, the collision of ideas, the relentless search to better understand each other as the necessary foundation to a functioning democracy. We are here to celebrate the Florida Humanities Hall of Fame, showing respect for those iconic individuals who have told Florida's stories for generations and who have given us the glue that holds this state together. And finally, we are here to honor Dr. Gary Mormino and his professional lifetime of service to the humanities and to the state. So, with your permission, we're going to start with the Hall of Fame. Nasheed and his staff, along with the Joe Harbaugh Circle of Friends. And the Joe Harbaugh Circle of Friends is basically an ersatz group of former board members who get together on the telephone or on Zoom, who look at each other, who are happy to see each other, and who talk about whatever comes to our mind. But one of the things we thought would be really important, based on Nasheed's good idea, was to establish a Hall of Fame. And the theory being, if you ask 100 Floridians, name the great poets, name the great educators, name the great philosophers, it would be hard for many people to come up with this list. And so Nasheed really felt it would be a good idea to start that process. And here we are for the inaugural session of that. And these are the people that, with his staff and with the circle of friends, we thought might be a great first class. They include James Weldon Johnson. Born in Jacksonville, a poet, an educator, a writer of essays and novels, a musician, a lyricist, a newspaper publisher, a preacher, and a diplomat. The first African American to pass the Florida bar since the end of Reconstruction, and the writer of Lift Every Voice and Sing, now known as the unofficial Black national anthem, James Weldon Johnson. Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings. In 1928, she moves to the tiny hamlet of Cross Creek, Florida, and writes of this state as perhaps no one else ever has. Quote, "It seems to me that the earth may be borrowed, but not bought. It gives itself in response to love and tending, offers its seasonal flowering and fruiting. Cross Creek belongs to the wind and the rain, to the sun and the seasons, to the cosmic secrecy of seed, and beyond all, to time." Mary McLeod Bethune. In 1904, Mary McLeod Bethune creates a school for African American girls in Daytona Beach with $1.50 in her pocket. She becomes the confidant of presidents and first ladies. She is the highest-ranking black woman in the federal government of her time. Bethune's statue now represents the state of Florida in the United States Capitol. Mary McLeod Bethune. Zora Neale Hurston, scholar, anthropologist, musician, novelist, playwright, daughter of Eatonville, the most masterful of storytellers. Hurston's book, Their Eyes Were Watching God, was designated by Time magazine as one of the 100 best English language novels of the past century. Zora Neale Hurston. Michael Gannon. Yay. Mr. Gannon moved to St. Augustine in 1940. He delivered papers to the home of Zora Neale Hurston. He was a sports writer and a radio broadcaster. He also knew presidents and kings and was considered Florida's historian. He was a beloved Catholic priest who helped his Gainesville community navigate the turmoil of the 1960s and 1970s. His baritone voice, calm demeanor, and teaching skills were legendary. And it was Gannon who reminded America that, quote, when Plymouth was founded, St. Augustine was undergoing urban renewal. And let me say that we didn't know this before, but Michael's wife, Gigi, is with us tonight. We're so honored to have her here. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, this one is pretty personal for many of us in the room. This is David Colburn. Many of us knew David and loved him dearly. From Providence, Rhode Island, and a graduate of Providence College, David Colburn was a captain and was a Vietnam War veteran. After receiving his PhD from the University of North Carolina, he took a teaching position at the University of Florida in 1972, and he never looked back. Public policy and public service were his superpowers. He was an extraordinary teacher, a gifted administrator. He was provost at the University of Florida. He was chair of Florida Humanities, and as one of only 2 Floridians who also chaired the National Federation of State Humanities Councils. He wrote insightful books about modern Florida. He led the Bob Graham Center for Public Service. He was one of a kind and one of the finest men any of us have ever known. We are so honored that his wife, the amazing Marion Colburn, is with us tonight as well, and we would like her to come up and receive this small token of our affection and esteem. Ah! Woo-ha! All right, let's warm up here, everybody. And now on to Gary. When so many of us admire Gary Mormino, it's hard to put his academic legacy into perspective. The personal gets all mixed up in this. Here is this kind and smart and lovely man dedicated to his cooking and his garden and his coffee. He would do anything for any one of us, and his love for Amy and Rebecca and Lynn is boundless and evident to everyone. Yet at the same time, he is a Florida Trend icon. He is the author of 6 books, and he's working on his 7th. He is the winner of the Lifetime Achievement Award in Writing by the state of Florida. He is the winner of the Salutos Prize for his book, The Immigrant World of Ybor City. He's been the Humanist of the Year, the winner of the Mazzaro Prize for Outstanding Book on Italian History. He has won numerous Charlie Awards. Michael Gannon said of Gary's book, Land of Sunshine, State of Dreams, that it will be the book by which all future studies of modern Florida will be measured. His most recent book, Dreams in the New Century, won the Florida Book Awards Gold Medal for History in 2022. He has influenced thousands of students and tens of thousands of Floridians. He hails from Wood River, Illinois. He is the oldest of 6 kids, 5 of whom graduated from college. The 6th is a cloistered nun, and Gary thinks is the smartest of them all. His father dropped out of school in the 4th grade, but the man could fix or build anything and was the hardest working person Gary ever knew. In that regard, his dad has been his role model. In high school, Gary was a 135-pound halfback. He was a cross-country runner and an all-county catcher in that baseball crazy part of the nation. When Nasheed told him he earned Hall of Fame nomination, Gary was disappointed. It was the wrong Hall of Fame. He attends Millikan College, where, thank God, he meets the singing, cheerleading, wonderful, smart Lynn Wheeler. The farm girl from Mount Zion. He cannot believe his good fortune. He works at a mental hospital. They make out in the parking lot, but that's a story for a different time. Gary attends the University of North Carolina for his master's and his PhD. Lynn remembers calls with Gary's parents on Sunday afternoons when they express how sorry they are that, quote, you have to work all the time while all he does is go to school. After a teaching stint back at Millikan, where the two girls are born, Gary receives a job offer from the University of South Florida in 1977. The first colleague he meets is John Belalovic. He admires another professor, John Iorio, and his remarkable daughter, Pam. And in 1980, you're going to hear from these people. And in 1980, he co-founds the Florida Studies program with his brilliant tennis-playing pal, Ray Arsenault. So before we ask the speakers to come up, let's watch the video. Andrew.
From the Gulf to the Glades, Florida Humanities is the storyteller of our state, celebrating the voices that defined us and illuminating the stories that bind us across generations. It is through these stories, scholarship, and shared history we honor those who shape Florida's spirit.
You know, Gary is the mind behind the concept of the Florida Dream. This idea that Florida has historically been the place to reinvent yourself, to achieve something new or even something grand. Florida, this socially, politically, and geographically temperate place, has long been conducive to fulfilling, the American dream. And while there are mythic foundations to this dream, sometimes people actually do live it. You know what? Gary Mormino has lived it as a historian of Florida.
Neither of us had ever stepped foot in the state of Florida. We knew no one. We moved here in 1977 with 2 babies, knowing not a soul. And luckily, the first people that we met, both at the college, people like John Belalovic in the history department, introduced us to all these people. But more importantly, when Gary first started exploring Ybor City and Tampa, he met 3 men. Those people, at least, made a huge difference because they introduced Gary to local history. And once he started getting his foot in the door of getting to know what was going on with this vibrant community with Tampa, that was what kind of launched all things Florida.
When I moved back to St. Petersburg and took over Florida Humanities, I remember Gary would stop by the office. He would always bring like guava pastry or fresh orange juice or something like that. He'd knock on the door and stick his head in and then say something really pertinent and interesting. And it dawned on me pretty quickly, when Gary walked in the door, there was going to be nothing more interesting or important in my day than whatever it was that Gary had to say.
I grew up on Miami Beach, and my view of Florida really developed as I got older. And when I started working for Florida Humanities as the editor of Forum, many of the things I learned was through reading Gary's stories, whether it be about the orange or the food culture or just illustrative people in Florida. I learned so much by reading Gary. You know, the more I read, the more I understood just how much he loved the state. You know, educating people about the richness of the state seemed to be a really important theme of Gary's scholarly life.
Gary not just studies Florida, but he loves Florida. And he tells the state's stories really beautifully. I would hope that through this Hall of Fame process and through his teaching and through this 6 or 7 books that he has written and through his continued presentations all over the state, that he helps and would help more people learn to love Florida, and that's his legacy, that people would look at Gary's body of work and say, wow, we have a better sense of what this unique place is. We have 3 speakers tonight before we turn it over to Gary, and then before we sing. There will be the Mormino Tabernacle Choir tonight. Our first speaker is Pam Iorio. At 26 years of age, Pam Iorio was the youngest person ever elected to the Hillsborough County Commission. She then served for a decade as the Hillsborough County Supervisor of Elections, and then as a beloved and incredibly successful two-term mayor of Tampa. She received her master's from USF. She is the past CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of America and was identified in 2018 as one of People magazine's 25 Women Changing the World. Ladies and gentlemen, Pam Iorio.
Well, good evening. First of all, thanks to Florida Humanities for paying tribute to Gary Mormino. And I'm honored to be one of the speakers along with John Belilovic and Ray Arsenault, such noted historians and friends, and so honored to share the stage with you. And I have to first give a shout out to Lynn, because Lynn is his biggest supporter and cheerleader and support, and as a couple, I just don't know any other couple quite like the two of you. And it just works, and I love it. And so, yeah. And wonderful to have your two daughters here. I was sharing that I have a little memory of them in Temple Terrace coming through the door and singing Christmas carols. Okay, so let's all start with a fact about Gary Mormino that we can all agree on. He is the only person in America who doesn't use a cell phone. It's amazing. What does he do with his time? Because he isn't scrolling, looking at his cell phone, getting on the internet, posting on social media. I mean, he has a lot of time because he's not doing any of that. One answer is arrives in a fat envelope every once in a while that you might get. I've been the recipient of many of them, and I always cherish them. I never open them right away. I wait until I have a quiet time, sit on the sofa, and then open the envelope and one by one pull out my microfilmed, Xeroxed newspaper clippings. And I cherish them, Gary, and then I start my own file of them in the hopes that one day one of them might lead to a particular project. They haven't so far, but I appreciate them, and they've added to my general body of knowledge. Gary is always thinking. He's ever inquisitive, observant, seeking to understand. And that's how he's been able to write with such insight about our great state of Florida. His book, The Land of Sunshine, State of Dreams, he focused on the social, the cultural, and economic themes. In his words, the ordinary Floridians that really made our state what it is. And he often took something that might seem insignificant, but by the time he was done with the story, you realized that that little insignificant incident actually had a huge impact on the growth and development of our state. So through his writings, we came to better understand Florida, which is not always easy to understand. Admittedly, we have our own unique culture. I find myself feeling particularly like a Floridian when I'm on the golf course and I'm ready to hit a shot and there's an alligator 50 feet from me and it doesn't disrupt my shot. And I often think that's something that really only a Floridian would do. You know, from another state, they would run. But, you know, I always feel very Floridian at that moment. Gary encouraged me to pursue my master's degree when I was supervisor of elections. And, you know, he has encouraged a lot of students, thousands, I was just talking at the table with someone who he encouraged and changed his life. He's changed thousands of lives. He changed mine. I was supervisor of elections. He encouraged me to pursue a master's degree in history. He said, just take one course at a time. You can start by taking this one course of mine, and I did that, and I did okay. Although my first paper, he marked it up with a lot of red ink and told me not to quit using the passive voice, which has been a nightmare for me ever since. And even writing tonight, got very concerned and upset because of the red ink. But I'm not going to give him a copy of this. I'm keeping this. But he encouraged me. And so it lit a fire in me and a passion. And what turned into a love of Florida history actually turned into a love of civil rights history, thanks to him. And then that love of civil rights history turned into me wondering if I had done enough myself in my own political life to make a difference, and then I concluded I hadn't. So then, because of that, I decided to run for mayor. So really, he's responsible for me being mayor, and if you're unhappy with my time as mayor, Gary is the one to blame. That was a long way of saying that. But actually, I observed how he was with the students, and he was always the same, kind, interested. He brought out the best in them. He made them feel comfortable in the classroom. There was nothing that someone could say that he would ever put down or make them feel inadequate. Never. That's never part of Gary. Generous with his time and with his thoughts, with his suggestions. Truly a mentor to thousands of students. So I watched how he was as a professor. I had already known him as a friend, but I learned from watching him as a professor. And I saw the influence that he had on so many. So I thought a lot about tonight in Florida Humanities and where we are in this world. And I concluded that as we gather to honor Gary, that it's really a testament to the enduring examination of our human condition through history, literature, philosophy, and the arts. That tonight we place humanities front and center cannot be taken for granted, because as Doris Kearns Godwin would observe, these are not ordinary times. So how do we navigate these times? One way is to do exactly what we're doing. By celebrating the vast contributions of Zora Neale Hurston, Marjorie Rawlings, Mary McLeod Bethune, Michael Gannon, James Weldon Johnson, and David Colburn. To quote Gary, Florida has always been more about tomorrow's possibilities than today's realities. And tomorrow's possibilities might be shaped by those here tonight and millions more who know the importance of history, critical thinking, diversity, creativity, and understanding. Tomorrow's possibilities are really unknown to us, but hope motivates and strengthens, and our past gives us hope. There's a passage that Gary wrote in Immigrants on the Hill, which I thought was particularly moving. I'm going to paraphrase it. Gary's grandfather, Rosalino Mormino, laid bricks at the Standard Oil refinery so his father could be a machinist at the Shell Oil refinery so that his son could be a writer. Tonight, in just one city across our vast, great country, good people in this room are gathered to honor a really good person. He's a husband and a father, an educator, a writer, a historian. He's a friend. He's a thinker, a mentor, a proud American. I believe that this man and this recognition should give all of us hope. Thank you.
Before I ask John to come up, I need to say something. Tonight, so many people have helped make this happen, but one person really did, and that's Sandy Reef. And if you will just give Sandy Reef some applause. He is responsible for the flan. We were going to have another dessert, and I said, Sandy, can you use your incredible power to get us flan? And he did. It was great. John Belalovic, joining the U.S. History Department in 1970. 1970, John taught at USF for 50 years. Just remarkable. He holds his PhD from the University of Nebraska. He was a Fulbright scholar in Azerbaijan the same year that Gary was in lovely Italy. He's been a nominee for the Bancroft Prize, the winner of multiple undergraduate teaching awards, the only historian I know who speaks kindly of James Buchanan and George McClellan. And along with the incomparable Rachel Bleckman, is the finest chair of Florida Humanities that I ever served with. John defines gentleman and scholar, and he is Gary's dear friend. John, come talk to us.
Yeah, the approximate's the key, right?
Ray Arsenault, I'm looking at you.
Oh, my. Yeah, you mentioned Gary being in Italy at the same time. I was in the Soviet Union. Oh, there's stories there. I saved his letters, by the way, Steve. He's telling me what he's eating in Italy, and I'm telling him what I'm eating in the Soviet Union. It wasn't pretty. Good evening, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here and see so many old friends. Oh, wow. Speaking of 50 years, still vertical, and seeing you and talking with you, what a pleasure. This is one of those joyous events where we take the opportunity to honor a man who has contributed tirelessly to the state of Florida and the humanities in particular, far and wide. Most recently, he traveled to St. Louis and was mentioned, where he delivered a powerful lecture on 19th century immigration and religion to a group of cloistered nuns, Poor Clare nuns. Right? Now that, my friends, is commitment. Now, true, there may have been modest pressure since one of the nuns was his sister. Right? With the exception of his long-suffering wife, Lynn. Perhaps I have known Gary Ross Mormino longer than anyone else in this room tonight. As a dear friend and a colleague. I met Gary in the winter of 1976 in Atlanta, almost 50 years ago, when he interviewed for a vacancy in immigration history at the USF Tampa campus. Fortunately, we offered and he accepted the position at USF, moving into his home in Temple Terrace with Lynn and two precocious toddlers, Rebecca and Amy. Prior to his arrival in Tampa, Gary's research background in his first book focused on the Hill in St. Louis, an Italian enclave and home of baseball legends Yogi Berra and Joe Garagiola, and close to his hometown, as was mentioned, of Wood River, Illinois. Now, Gary continued that theme, but went local with his path-breaking volume on the immigrant world of Ybor City. This collaborative work with his Chapel Hill soulmate, the late George Pizzetta, launched a career that in many ways has brought him to this venue tonight. We only wish George could be with us to share in the good times and the memories. You would have loved George Pizzetta. Over the years, Gary not only further developed his expertise on immigrants in our community, but widened his vision to include a more extensive study of Florida history. In the process of his academic transition, he has become both a valued friend of the humanities and the leading historian of our state. The author of, as was mentioned, more than a half dozen articles and monographs, Gary is a Renaissance man. He incorporates ethnicity, note his study of Italians in Florida, with culture and politics, war and biography, in a series of volumes that are researched with relentless detail and depth. You must see his office, by the way, and you must. And the unique organization of thousands of newspaper clippings. It's incredible. His scholarship is crafted in a style marked by both readability and sensitivity for his subject. Many of his colleagues, myself included, wish we possessed his way with words. More recently, Gary is writing and teaching on the topic of food in Florida's past and present. Again, a subject you gain greater appreciation of if you watch him work his magic roasting pork on a green egg in his backyard. Arguably, no one has traveled Florida more often from the Keys to Pensacola, speaking to groups large and small, delivering his message of the value of the humanities through his lectures, workshops, and seminars. There are untold times when he enlightened you and me without personal compensation. We would be remiss should we not mention Gary's symbiotic relationship with the Italian community here in Tampa. That bond included partnering, wait a minute, hold it, with Gino Paolucci. Now, in case you're wondering, Gino, he of Gino's Pizza Rolls, Chung King, Chinese food, and Michelina's, right, frozen food fame. He was here in Tampa, highlighting an Italian festival in Ybor City, 1980. Right, 1980. Gary took the opportunity to reveal his entrepreneurial skills as evidenced by, again, wait for it, this handcrafted, right, Sicilian in Tampa t-shirt, which was an immediate bestseller. Luckily for all of you, he still has a few of these shirts in varying sizes in the trunk of his car. After tonight's event, if you approach him, I'm sure he'll make you a deal. Cash only, please. Gary took his love of all things Italian to the homeland several times. Teaching in Florence and Rome, Fulbright, my wife and I had the pleasure of spending time in Italy and dining with the Morminos. Wow. Gary's language skills grew mightily over the months he was there. Although there was the occasional hiccup. After one delightful evening at an excellent restaurant, our waiter asked if the food and service met our expectations. Dr. Mormino responded that we truly enjoyed our experience. Unfortunately, a slight mispronunciation turned the words of thanks, perhaps stupendo, into a response that was stufato, annoyed and bored. Uh-oh. It may go without saying that the staff glared at us as we exited the building, never to return. Gary Mormino, my friend. The trifecta of teacher, scholar, linguist, lover and promoter of the humanities in the broadest sense. He's a kind and generous friend to those of us in this room. There is no one more deserving of the recognition we are bestowing on him tonight. Thank you, Gary, for all you've given us.
Sicilians in Tampa. Ray Arsenault. Ray Arsenault is a graduate of Princeton and Brandeis. He is the John Hope Franklin Professor of Southern History and has taught at USF since 1980. His books on the Freedom Riders, on the history of St. Petersburg, on Marian Anderson, on Arthur Ashe, and on John Lewis are national treasures. He co-founded the Florida Studies program with Gary, and this remarkable team of educators has changed countless students' lives for the better. Ray, please come talk with us.
Well, what a glorious event. I feel like this is like a class reunion. There are people here I haven't seen for 15 or 20 years. Many of them I met through Gary or John. It's really wonderful to have this chance to say things about Gary. You know, we spent a lot of time together on and off the tennis court. You know, when you have a close friend like that, you don't really have a chance to say the things that's really in your heart. But, you know, Gary's dedication to the study of Florida history over the past 45 years has been, I think, truly heroic. I think more than anyone, any person that I know, he's made Florida history his personal passion, really. In addition to Lynn and Becky and Amy, of course. He's accomplished just an extraordinary amount in these years. And I think the one thing I'd like to say about Gary is that, you know, I think he's really thrilled to get in the Hall of Fame. He thought it would be Cooperstown, you know, but one of his favorite places on earth. But the thing about Gary is that he's a Hall of Famer in every sense, not just as a scholar and a teacher. He's one of the finest people you'll ever meet. It's all about kindness, as John said, and generosity, and caring about other people. In addition to that, he knows more about Florida history than anyone that I've ever known. I've been so fortunate over the last 40 years to be sort of his sidekick in a lot of things. And I've seen him grow, really, into a brilliant historian and a marvelously imaginative writer. I think that's really where he really shines. He has a wonderful sense of storytelling and of the telling anecdote, and a wonderful way with words. But it's been great to sort of be by his side. I often thought of myself as sort of the Tonto to his Lone Ranger, you know. And you have to be a certain age to understand that reference, I guess. But, you know, you think about his major books that has already been referred to, Immigrant Worldview or City, Land of Sunshine, State of Dreams, and Dreams of the New Century. That's just the tip of the iceberg for Gary. You know, those are the things I think everybody knows, but he has also written, you know, several other really important shorter books, monographs, countless articles in magazines and newspapers, and you know, he just op-eds, interviews in documentary films and on news shows about Florida. Just his hundreds of his walking tours of Ybor City. I'm sure who in this room has not taken his walking tour of Ybor City. Just a wonderful, I said, a storyteller, and I think that's really how he teaches, why his students love him so much. It's because he relates to them on a human level. Really an inspiring teacher. I've seen him close up for so many years. Also a book editor. You know, we did the Florida History and Culture series in 1996, and that led to the Florida Studies program seven years later. You know, it's just an amazing, amazing number of accomplishments. But I think, you know, in Gary's case, it's not just what he has done, you know, that's so striking. It's sort of how he has done it, you know. He's one of the most unusual people I think I've ever known. As his close friends will tell you, Gary has a unique way of doing things. In addition to being a brilliant historian, and he's also a truly unforgettable character. We've had a lot of wild adventures over the years, and misadventures, I would say. Some of us like to talk about Planet Gary. He sort of lives on Planet Gary, you know. I think it was Pam already mentioned, you know, who doesn't have a cell phone in this area? And he's very proud of it too. You know, fortunately, Lynn has a cell phone, so she bails him out all the time. He's basically anti-technology in general, I would say. For years, all professors were given computers for their office. Gary refused. He would not take it for a year. More than a decade, he fought this battle. He wanted an IBM Selectric typewriter. That had been the dream of his youth. He didn't want any he thought computers were going to be a passing fancy, you know. Really quite amazing. He held out. Finally, he gave in. As I think John mentioned, he also rarely uses filing cabinets. He doesn't really believe in them, you know. He prefers to put his research files in huge stacks, either on his desk or on a table, or, it's just incredible to see his office. I've taken pictures of them. I have photographic proof of sometimes they're like sort of geological layers of things that, in fact, a story about the Humanities Council years ago, what was it? Margot Hammond, who'd been the theater critic for the Times, she was working with the Dali Museum, and she was given half of an office. Gary had an office. He'd already retired from teaching, and he had an office in the Humanities building, and I brought Margot in to see the office. And so Gary happened to be in there, but we couldn't see him because there were piles of the paper, you know, and she just shook her head and walked away. You know, she said, and it was pretty amazing. I think also something that really sort of speaks to Gary's personality and his love of people is his clipping service. That's already been mentioned. You know, I'm sure many of you have received these parcels of Xeroxed or you know, he runs them off the machines in various ways. And I can't tell you, I mean, I was chair of the department for a while, and we had a mailing budget. Frank, the dean, and Frank is here. Now Gary had retired from teaching, but he was already still accounting for 90% of our postal budget, you know. And I just didn't have the heart to break it to him that we had to sort of scale back a little bit because it's such an endearing thing that he's so thoughtful. He picks those things out. He spends hours every day going through, finding these things, and then ferreting them out, dividing up people. He thinks that you'll love it. I've gotten some packets 3 and 4 times of the same articles, but it's okay. The thought is what really counts here, I think. But I think just for me, always the most amazing aspect of Gary's unparalleled, really, master of Florida history is that he began his life's work, on Florida from scratch at the age of 30. He had never been to Florida when he came down to take this job. His first visit was 1977. Can you imagine that? So here's Gary Mormino. He's probably never had key lime pie, never had deviled crab, probably no Cuban sandwiches, all the things that we associate with him. Because he was really a son of the Midwest, of a working class Italian-American family from Wood River, which is about as far away culturally as you can get, I would say, from Florida. He once told me that when he went off to Millikan College, as an 18-year-old, it was the first time he realized that the sky wasn't brown. He grew up in this oil refinery town. He couldn't believe the sky was so blue. He never saw the ocean, any ocean, until he was 19 years old. Isn't that amazing? And yet somehow he was able to start from that place and develop this incredible love and understanding about Florida, really unparalleled. It's just extraordinary what he was able to do. A couple other things, and I'll stop. With Gary, you can go on forever. Historians always can, of course. We can't clear our throats in 5 minutes. I'm sorry about that. But I think Gary really remains proud of his blue-collar Midwest background. I think he retains that pride. And I really. I'll tell one story, and to me, this sums up Gary. So this was in the 90s. We were having a seminar out at the Tradewinds Hotel out on the beach, St. Pete Beach, and it was sort of organized by Florida Studies people at FSU. And so we met them out there. We hadn't met them before. And Lynn was out of town. She'd gone to Illinois, and she took their car. Okay. And Gary had charge of the kids. And so what did he do to get out to the motel? He went to rent a wreck, okay? And for $10, he rented this car, which really was a wreck. And you got to get this picture. So I'm pulling into the parking lot, Gary into this rent-a-wreck with Amy and Becky in the car. And then right at the very moment, this guy from FSU who ran their program, who's in about a $1,000 suit, driving a $100,000 Mercedes, pulls up next to it, and as he sees Amy shimmying out of the window because the doors were rusted closed. You couldn't use the doors. And so I'll never forget the look on that guy's face when he saw, boy, they've got it rough down here in South Florida, But somehow that was Gary, and it was one of the crazy times. But he's an original, and in all the best senses of that. I was thinking, maybe some of you watched the Dodgers game last night, and the incredible feat by Shohei Ohtani, 3 home runs, 10 strikeouts. It was just superhuman. And one of the announcers said, we've all witnessed greatness here tonight. We've all witnessed greatness here tonight. That made me think of Gary, because we've been witness to greatness here tonight. Thank you, Gary, for all you've done for us.
Well, let's hear from the great one, Gary Mormino.
I am exhausted. Thank you. This has been a wonderful evening. Oh, my. If I've done some good deeds in my life, they were for a good cause we're celebrating tonight, Florida Humanities. In 1981, I believe it was, I stumbled upon the offices of the Florida Humanities Council, then called Florida Humanities Council, at USF Tampa, and they had an office on the second or third floor shared with the English department. Must have been 200 square feet, and a new world opened, the idea of Florida Humanities, and so many good people there. Ann Henderson is here tonight, who was the director. Many of you remember her. The first humanities talk I gave was with my colleague George Pozzetta, and we talked about Sicilians in Tampa at the West Tampa Sons of Italy Lodge. It was fabulous. I mean, it was just, yeah, it opened a new world. You should know that I came from a rather unusual background, as several have mentioned. My father was a fourth grade dropout. In fact, I believe my father and I'm quite sure, hold a record. We were both kicked out of St. Bernard's Catholic School by the same nun, Sister Eulalia. Sister Eulalia, although I think we were mispronouncing her name, but regardless, my father, this must have been 1927, Sister Eulalia asked him to lead the class in the Lord's Prayer, and he began, "Our Father, who works at the Standard Oil Refinery." Wrong answer, and he never returned. So it's 1954, I think. I'm in first grade, St. Bernard School. Sister Eulalia, an elderly nun, is there, and asked the class to form a circle, and everyone tell your classmates what your father does for a living. This is very 1950s. And I said, my father is a blackjack dealer on a casino on the Mississippi River. And she called my mother, told her to come and get me, that I'd committed a flaw. And in fact, my father was a blackjack dealer because Shell Oil Refinery was on strike, and he's got a big family, eventually 6 kids. You have to do what you have to do. The best thing that happened in my life was meeting Lynn Wheeler, who our first date was in 1967. We went to the only Chinese restaurant in Decatur, Illinois. I thought that was rather sophisticated. And she ordered a fish sandwich, and I, being much more sophisticated, ordered chop suey. And somehow I got a second date. Although, when we were getting serious, I think her father was rather suspicious of Morminos, Catholics. He met my grandfather, Stassi, who had one arm, ran a saloon. In fact, I had an uncle who also ran a saloon. And I'm at the first time at her home for dinner. This is a big deal. And their farm family, the dining table looked out over a cornfield about 15 feet away. And her father was glinting, and he asked his son, John, bring me my rifle. This is chicken dinner, mashed potatoes. There's a little hole in the window he had drilled, puts the rifle in front, over the mashed potatoes, fires his gun, and his son goes out and picks up a chipmunk. Now, I may not be the smartest tack, but I realized this is a message for me, that if you ever harm my daughter, you're going to get it right between the eyes. So, before I became a Florida historian, I was an immigration historian. in grad school, I wanted to try to figure out the Morminos. They're a strange group. And I studied Sicilians. I had a Fulbright to Italy, went to the hometown of Alia in Sicily. And ironically, it is in Italy that I became a Florida historian. Very, very interesting. Few of you know about this. The year 1981, Lynn and the kids came. I was teaching for Florida State in Florence, and then they had to leave, so I was in Italy for about 6-8 months by myself. So I lived with my Sicilian relatives who had moved after World War II to a ghetto outside Rome. It was just an incredible experience. They knew no English. My Italian was improving. He had been a soldier for the Italian army in World War II, captured at Stalingrad, and somehow made it literally walking back from Russia to Sicily. So it was a fascinating experience. I soon realized I was hopelessly homesick and missed my family, and I developed a routine. This is how I became a Florida historian. Every Sunday after a meal, I would take the bus from this small town into Rome. I would then go to the most fashionable street I had ever seen, Via Veneto, and I would go to the American Embassy Library, read the newspapers, and then would go to a fashionable cafe. And the book I was reading was The Yearling by Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings. And someone had, Leland Hawes and Hampton Dunn, if you're an old-timer here, Leland Hawes was an old newspaper writer for the Tampa Tribune. Hampton Dunn had started with the Tampa Daily Times and then was with AAA, and they were big boosters of the USF Special Collections, and we were friends. And they knew I was going to Italy, and before I left, they gave me a copy of Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings' The Yearling. I must admit, I don't think I had ever heard of the book, but I took it along, and I would take it to this fashionable cafe, and I would start crying. It was such a touching, sensitive book. It's still my favorite novel of all time. And between The Yearling and what was happening in Florida in 1980 and 81, this is a remarkable year in Florida. You have the Mariel boat lift, 125,000 Cubans arriving in Miami at one time. You had several other huge events, the election, obviously. And I'm watching this from abroad, and I made a vow that when I return, I'm going to become a Florida historian. In fact, Tom Ankerson is here. Tom was in my first Florida history class I taught. He was the graduate assistant. Tom knew more about Florida than I did at the time, but it was a wonderful beginning, to say the least. And Florida Humanities, I don't think I could have done this without Florida Humanities. They are such an extraordinary organization reaching out to social scientists and faculty members in Florida. In 1980, by the way, Florida reached a population of 9 million people. It was, to give you an idea, it was on the eve of Pearl Harbor, it was, I think, 1 million in 1940. And that's the other thing I was watching from abroad, is the dynamism in Florida in those years. And when I came back, I decided this would be interesting to try to catch this state in incredible transition and dynamic change between World War II and 1980s. And that became the Land of Sunshine, State of Dreams. There's a famous line in The Yearling. In the end, Jody runs away from home. The mother is nearly hysterical because they had to shoot Jody's deer. It's a children's book, by the way. And he finally returns after several weeks. They're sure he's dead. And when he opens the door, his pa says, "You've come back different. You've taken a punishment. You ain't a yearling no longer." And in many ways, this is, I think, a question we should have for Florida. Are we a yearling anymore? I mean, are we going to get serious about the environment in Florida and other issues? I'm very concerned about. In fact, this would be an interesting question. There's no right answer. This would be the only, just a yes or no. Yes, millions saying no, don't go there. But I've asked this to several groups. Be honest now. Yes. Are you confident about the future of Florida? Raise your hand. Yes. Now, see, if I were the governor, or if I were, I mean, this is serious. Florida has always radiated optimism. That era, you don't come to Florida in 1960 if you're 60 years old and expect to die the next year. And optimism has been kind of sluiced through Florida's veins. This is very concerning. I'm very worried about the pessimism. And I see this with students these days. When Ray Arsenault and I began this book series, the very first book was, how many of you knew Julia Mosley? A few of you. Julia Mosley is my favorite person of all time. She had an 1880s cottage across from the Brandon Square Mall. You'd have to know how to get there, but I took several groups of my students there, and she did a book of her family's letters from the 19th century. It was the first book in our series. I wrote the foreword, and she edited my foreword. But Michael Gannon was the reader for her book. I mean, the very idea that Michael Gannon would read this journeywoman's book is extraordinary. But Michael wrote this beautiful prose. So come, reader, into that distant world where a prototypical Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings reminds us yet again and again of how much we Floridians have sadly lost reverence for the land. Months later, after that, I ran into John Belovic. John and I used to go to the 4th of July Cafe. How many of you ever went to the 4th of July Cafe? Oh, it was just the best ever. I told John, I'm thinking of becoming a Florida historian. He said, let's keep this between ourselves. When people ask you, you're an immigration historian until you get tenure. But it really was that moment that I decided to switch fields, which you really don't do in higher ed. Sandy Reef and the Duckwall Foundation, they were a cornerstone in helping the Florida Studies program. And thank you, Sandy. I've known the Florida Humanities when they were originally the Florida Endowment for the Humanities. They changed the name because the word endowment implied they had money. And to the Florida Humanities Council, and now it's Florida Humanities. Please know what just an extraordinary night this is. I'm just exhausted, emotionally exhausted at the good vibrations. And thank you for coming, and thank you for caring about Florida Humanities. Thank you.
All right, before Nasheed closes our evening down, we're going to sing. applause was premature. What, Lynn? Are you ready? Yeah. All right. Okay, so the song, well, most of you seem to have figured this out. It's on the back of your program. I'm looking at Wellington over there. All right, you all know this song, this famous Italian folk song. Is that going to work better? All right, so you know, when the moon hits a violet, a big. What? You're there? Okay, good. Are we feeling good about this? Okay, I want strength. I want voice. I want passion. He's Italian, for God's sake. When the hard-working boy from Southwest Illinois, that's for me. When he serves the ball, he could challenge Nadal, that's Mormino. He could catch, he could run, and his sister's a nun, we're not lying. He met Lynn at Milliken, she was such a win, the belle of Mount Zion. Visit his desk and you put your life at risk, that's Mormino. When you need more caffeine and want Gary's machine, he'll say yes. When you walk in a dream, but you know you're not dreaming, you're in Florida. Excuse me, but you see, that's why we Mormino. How are we feeling? We feeling good? Okay, verse 2. That is working. Okay. When you're taking a test and we're taught by the best, that's Mormino. I like this line. No sartorial clue, but bleeds tar heel blue. That's Mormino. He won't sing or dance a jig or drive a rig, but he'll make dinner. Then he'll regale you with a tale true about Millard Caldwell. That's a winner. When he goes to the grill, then you're in for a thrill, that's Mormino. When you need more caffeine and want Gary's machine, he'll say yes. When you walk in a dream, but you know you're not dreaming, you're in Florida. Excuse me, but you see, that's why we love Gary Mormino. Last line, one more time. Excuse me, but you see, that's why we love Gary Mormino. Rashid, close this down, buddy.
Wow, I have 18 pages here to speak on in 30 minutes, you know.
but I don't think I have time. But this has been remarkable. I know there's a microphone. I'm supposed to be holding it. So I'm going to ask our board members, current board members, to come to the stage now, if possible. That's Catherine Wilkins, Jack Davis, Dion Egner, Braulio, Cologne, and Miriam Springle. So our current board members, they're helping us fight the good fight, and want to say thank you to everyone who's here. In the words of our board member, Dan Denton, who couldn't be here, but I think he speaks for all of us. Gary Mormino, your many books and articles, and especially your sweeping and authoritative contributions to Forum magazine, have made history come alive for Florida Files. That's a new word for me. Florida Files everywhere. Warm congratulations and many thanks to you, Gary. Gary's a friend, and I've also been blessed to receive these packets of thoughtful clippings, and I was there for about a week, and I'm like, what is this? And they were so thoughtful, and I'm like, I'm interested. How did he know I would be interested? But anyway, that's Mormino. So thanks, everyone. Please take advantage of the QR code. They are for you. They're personal, and you won't know until you use your phone to check out the QR code. But thanks for all your support. Take a look at our calendar. Thanks to our current board members. We're fighting the good fight. We'll tell wonderful stories next year. Read and share. Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight.